Here we are. We are now live. Mark. Good
Anna.
Morning. Good
How are you,
morning.
darling?
I'm not too bad. And you?
Yeah, it's all good. It's been a while since we've spoken.
It's been absolute ages. I don't know how many months it's been, but obviously you've been away for a while and you're still not finished. This is the reason why obviously we haven't managed to catch up properly, because you've been on the road. Is that a new hat I see on your head, first of all?
It is. Now, Anna, we were on the road doing a talk, and a lady said to me, she said, Mark, she said, your great granddad's hat's looking a bit sad, darling. She said, so I bought you a new bowler hat. So when I'm doing interviews now, I wear my new bowler hat.
Yeah.
And wear my old bowler hat just for doing talks.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you are a bowler hat farmer after all, isn't it?
Well, this is it. You've got to have a few bowler hats. This is my third one now.
Oh, okay. I see people are joining. So good morning, everybody, whoever's joining us. Thank you for being here. Of course, that video will go not live, but goes published after it's loaded up. So anyway, Mark, so how have you been then? There's been a lot of things happening, hasn't it?
Anna, there's been a lot happening. So just to backtrack, for those who don't know who I am,
yes.
Mark the bowler hat farmer. So originally we were farming in Suffolk, but because of changes, that's no longer doing. So I decided to take myself and Gloria on tour this year. To talk about the food and the farming, my concerns within food supply, food stability, the necessity to prep like you do, and to try and get the general public and farmers, Anna, to understand the necessity for us to produce more food for ourselves as a country, but especially for the public to understand the importance of having food in the cupboard, stored away in the garden, and start looking at prepping it as a bit more of a more serious issue, especially when you look at the geopolitical stuff what's going on at the moment.
Yeah.
So we've taken that, we set off in February, and we've been all around the country. We've been down as far as Land's End. We're in Somerset at the moment. We've been up as far as Hadrian's Wall, north of Newcastle. Mm-hmm. We're going home to Suffolk next week before we go back to Land's End, before we go back to John O'Groats. So we're going to hit John O'Groats right through Scotland this year as well, which is beautiful to go and see the country. Don't get me wrong. And obviously Gloria's never seen the country before like I haven't. So that's great. But the big thing what's coming out of it, Anna, we've now spoken in front of 11,000 people.
Wow, that's good.
And we've hit it hard. You know, we've told people as it is. We haven't tried to highlight, anything what isn't true. And the big thing is that we've taken photographs, Anna, everywhere we've gone, asking the question about, would anyone like to buy chemical-free food direct from a farmer? Because not from a supermarket. I don't think that's the way to go. And also the fact that we need chemical-free food, obviously, for our own health. But also to get people to start to understand the necessity for thinking more locally and not supply chains that are coming from Peru or Argentina or, South Africa, whatever it might be.
Shall we just quickly, sorry for interrupting, but just say before, obviously to people who are, again, potentially new, the whole fact, obviously, we've started doing the chats and you doing what you're doing, which we'll come back to, obviously, later on. The fact is that you said, obviously, how we're reliant on the food as an island, and amongst not food, but many things as well. The facts are that the farmers are, losing their farms or being sold out. A lot of those issues that are affecting this. This is what we're trying to fight against, isn't it? It's to for people to understand that how much pressure the farmers are under, what's sort of affecting the things that government are doing for not helping the farmers, selling other industry for the meats, for different things they're going abroad. It's not just growing, organic food, for example. It is more than just that. It's far bigger picture, isn't it?
There's a much bigger picture at play. And one of the interesting things is when we very first started doing our talks together, I used to quote the statistics, and the statistics at that point when the government, according to the government's website, was that we produce 60% of our food in the UK, that we need for the UK. That was never 60%. Anyway, now the stats are down to 32% of the food we produce. With a forecast to be down to 20% by 2030. And that's concerning. So effectively, if 20% of the food means we're going to get one meal in every 5 that we're used to having, that's English. So, you know, people have got to step up and start taking ownership of this, in my opinion.
Yeah. Is that the 20%, sorry, or 30%, 32%, in fact, of truly produced food, or does that also include the food that's been imported from, say, EU and then repackaged here, sold as a British food?
Well,
which just happens, doesn't it? We know we talked about this.
Yeah, you do know that farm washing is a big thing, Anna. We got told off for that last year. I got called up by the Red Tractor Brigade about mentioning that. But yeah, it's a relevant point, Anna. I would say it's less than 32% already.
Yeah.
And talking to some of the farmers, they're just ready to get out of it altogether. So, Anna, as we've travelled around the country, some of the things which we've spoken to farmers about. So, we were in Lincolnshire. There's 7,000 acres of prime farmland which has been taken over by solar.
Yeah.
12,000 acres in Derbyshire, 15,000 acres in Lancashire. We had then we went down to Kent. In Kent, there's a new massive farm which they're slowly putting together. They're getting planning on different fields, and then they join up all the dots.
Yeah.
This is massive. Hundreds of thousands of acres they've got dedicated to go down to solar, which achieves nothing. No. It's just a waste of time, you know.
Can the farmers say no, though? That's what many people genuinely want. When farmers sell out, sometimes they do, don't they? Because it's an easy way out to earn the money, which is in some way understandable if you're struggling and you've got the family to feed from one angle. But from the second angle, if we are fighting for the farmers to be farmers, then farmers need to do their best to try and to keep to their farming thing rather than selling out the for the solar panels or wind farms, that sort of thing.
I mean, the problem is, Anna, that with the new government legislation under Ed Miliband's beautiful understanding of how, you know, we're going to be net zero, how it works under that is he has the last say. So if they want to put a big solar farm in an area, they just go, he just rubber stamps it, and that's the end of it. No one can do anything. So the farmers have two choices. They can either take thousands of pounds, hundreds or even millions of pounds for doing it, or get sweet. So they go, well, I've got no choice. And that's basically where they're backed into. So we're seeing lots of things. So the solar farming's huge. The get out of farming payment is massive. That's up to £300,000 now. A farmer can claim to retire if he sells the farm. So where does the farm go? Well, it goes to the likes of BlackRock or Vanguard Backstreet, one of those, you know, enemies of the state. On from that, you know, you've got wind turbines now. You know, all of this, the necessity for energy is only to feed what's coming. The requirement of AI, the requirement of all the cameras, digital security, all the other nonsense we don't need anyway. Now, as we've travelled the country, and one thing we have seen is the defiance from farmers that just want to farm. And the other thing we've seen is lots and lots of community projects, which is something I'll talk about, because the community projects are setting up thick and fast all over the country. And we got invited to Stroud yesterday to do a talk to 100 farmers, where I delivered a section about a CIC we've launched. So we've launched a community interest company, which sits kind of in between a charity and a limited company. And people can kindly sponsor and help with, you know, our tour and things at the bowlerhatfarmer.com. Give that a quick plug. So with the CIC, farmers can allocate 4 or 5 acres of growing space for a community project. The community then gets involved in growing fruit and veg and potentially meat for their local community. So it shortens the supply chain. It takes the limitation from the farmer away of what he's capable of doing, put it into the hands of the community. And we're seeing a lot of farmers very excited about that as a possibility, because they know everything's wrong with the food supply chain, but they don't know how to change it. So they're then looking at, okay, well, what happens to that food? Does it go to supply somebody like Organity or Good Food Project or whoever? Does it stay locally for a farm shop? Does it stay locally for a box scheme? Whatever that needs to look like, doesn't matter. What's important is that food is being produced locally for local people and seasonally, Anna. We both, you know, big people who talk about this. For me, seasonal food gives you the nutrition you need in your local area, and that's key.
What's happened, Mark, with the obviously you were the founder of the Food Finders Hub, right? So how does that now work with the CIC? Obviously,
Yeah.
again,
So what I've done, Anna, is I've transferred the foodfindershub.org now. It's been had an upgrade. It's had a sexy new body put to it. And that's now completely transferred into ownership of the CIC.
Yeah. So would you tell people again what's the thing is all about? Obviously, what's changed, so the new people.
Yeah. So the food finder. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, the foodfindershub.org. The idea is quite simply that farmers can produce food, and when I say food, I mean fruit, veg, and meat. They can also produce other things. Let's say on a farm like dairy or yogurt, ice cream, derivatives from those things, and sell them via the website to the public, directly to the public. And the public can go on there, find the nearest place to them, and they can be in a position that they can say, okay, well, I'm looking for a butcher in, and it's not just farmers, it's butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, greengrocers, everybody's on there. I think we've got about 350 suppliers on there now. We're now starting to push that again. Because we've been stepped back from that while the new site was being built, but that's now all in place.
Yeah.
The next section's for farmers to be able to physically sell on there rather than just advertise themselves.
Yeah.
Then there'll be help and support on there. We've put lots of your videos on there telling people how to prep and different things. And I think I just want it as a huge resource that the CIC can guide people towards. People will be able to advertise their land on there. Farmers will be able to advertise land, and community groups will be able to find land on there. So there's lots of different things coming to the table with that. That excites me because it's taking that away from the supermarkets and the government, and putting it back in the hands of the people. The people can do as much or as little with it as they want, and they can gain from it what they want. So lots of exciting things happening on that side.
People got to obviously understand it's been taking a while, been at it for how long has that been? We've been talking about it for the past year, and things obviously takes time. People understand that people to come forward to register, because the Food Finders Hub, it is basically what you said is a hub, so you can link the farmers or people that produce food directly with the consumer. So consumers have to look for them for the area, and then obviously they're able to get in touch and do that. And obviously it takes for people.
Yeah, and we've had some positive feedback. And some of the farmers, as we're traveling around the country, saying, we get 4 or 5 customers a month which contact them and say, I've never heard of you before. You're only 3 miles down the road. So that's great. And that's what we wanted to achieve, to give the local community more options. And to bring that so the farmers had more options, because a lot of farmers think their only option is supermarkets. And then they go on there and they suddenly realize that, when they advertise themselves, they start to get inquiries coming through, and they go, even if they can't fulfill them at that point, people start to know they're there, and then they can go back and tell the people, at a later date that, right, we're ready to go. We've now got 2 pigs, a cow, and 3 sheep that are ready to be butchered. We know you can order them in advance, whatever it might be. So, and I think one of the challenges we've seen going around the country as well is the fact that farmers genuinely believe they're backed into a corner and they've got no options. When they start to realise, as we talk to them, there is other options. There is other people out there trying to support the cause as well, because they think they're all alone. Then suddenly they realise that, people like you and I and different people are talking about this on social media, driving awareness of the situation. Then they start to go, oh, well, actually, that's not all a bad thing then. What we might be able to do is to look at this option and that option. So,
Why do you think, obviously you mentioned the red tract, we go down for, talking for stuff that we shouldn't be talking or shouldn't be talking. And one of our last chats, I think, got, it wasn't appropriate for the, for the monetization for advertising because of whatever the subject that apparently they didn't like. I don't think anything that was that horrible. It's only the truth. But why do you think, right, if technically, right, we are in, we're both from different, so you obviously from farming background, I'm just like an average person. We have our own opinions, but we do share the same pretty much views about the preparedness and that sort of thing. But at the same time, we have a potentially different, not so different understanding of farming, but we have our own views, right, in certain aspects of that. So why do you think the Red Tractor, the company that is meant to be the, the body, will stop us talking about your farmer, and you can still talk about telling people the truth of, what's out there and how this works? Why are we stopped by the body like that of talking about that? But I don't understand that.
I think what's important to understand, Anna, is Red Tractor, like a lot of other organisations, whether that's the Soil Association or whoever else, they are only limited companies. So what you're actually doing is attacking them and their principles, and and that's what you don't like. So it's not a government organisation. People think, oh, it must be a government organisation. It's not. It's purely a limited company. Exactly the same as councils are. Most governmental departments, they're limited companies. If you check them out, they are only. So what they're saying is, this is our rules.
Yeah.
And Mark, you're challenging our rules. Well, I appreciate I'm challenging your rules, but I'm not part of your system. No, for me, I'm not registered with Red Tractor for a reason.
No. See, well, that's the point. I've done a video, right? And I did this about is organic alive, right? It was talking about the organic, but it was concentrated on the basis it was from the supermarket stuff that's either been imported, that sort of thing, in generally. And yes, I looked into the soil associations, and apparently, actually, soil association is actually a charity. And exactly my thought was, they put in all those things, right? What organic or for example, can or cannot be, what could the farmer use, or, to count still as organic, certain things they don't even declare as something that farmer could be using, and they're still naming as that. But a charity, and I thought exactly that. What on earth, a charity, okay, they're apparently working on, making sure that the environment doesn't get harmed, doing and telling people what to do and setting standards that are almost legally binding. This is what I don't understand. It baffled me, because until that point, I thought the Soil Association was properly governing body that's been controlled, not controlled, but monitored by some other hierarchy.
So they basically just put their own ideas in place. Now, what I will say is that the lady who started the Soil Association had the best, and I mean the best, intentions in the world. Right. I've met her son several times. He used to be lived near to my farm shop in Bury St Edmunds, and used to come and see me. And he said if my mum knew now what she'd started, she'd turn in her grave, because for her side, she set it up with all the best will and intention in the world. Now, Anna, the problem I have with the Soil Association, and I was doing a talk with one of the guys from there last night, actually, alongside him, which was, but for me, the difference in between me organically growing and them telling me how I need to organically grow is a £500 a year certificate.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
They don't even check. Apparently, they're often, a lot of companies, a lot of, people get away with that, because apparently they don't actually follow up with the stuff. So it's kind of dodgy.
I mean, I know a farm that's got 10,000 acres over in Norfolk on the East Coast. They've got 10,000 acres. They've got a 5-acre field, what's classed as organic, and they pay £500 a year to certify that one field. And then all the rest of the stuff's shipped into the pack house via the rest of their farm and sold under organic. It's nonsense. Absolutely.
So they're growing organic and non-organic together.
Yeah. And then just sell the non-organic as organic.
Yeah. See, that's the point, right? When I did this video, some people are like, oh, because, we're talking about, say to you, about the farming stuff. I merely, again, pointed out the fact this is what the truth out there. We're not here to hide the truth, be it good or bad. We're still, pro-farming, but there is stuff that's happening out there that is not correct. And that was exactly my point, that unless somebody controls that fact as well, so even if he's got organic field and then organic, non-organic next to it, the wind blows, that sort of, nasty stuff gets in the organic. There's nobody there to control that and to stop that. So that was exactly the point. So
absolutely. And I think one of the things that pisses me off, Anna, more than anything, is why do we have to justify something that's chemically free grown? And the guy said to me, yes, and he was right on what he said. He said, because I always ask the question during our meetings and speeches, would anyone like to buy chemical free food direct from a farmer? Well, why should we have to say chemical in the sentence? Because it should just be food. Yeah. They should have to justify the shite they sell. We shouldn't have to sell the quality we sell.
Yeah.
Now that was actually brought out by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. Came up with that plan back in the about the 30s, that they thought actually I think it was just after the war, that they would state that anything what was grown without chemicals had to be branded organic, so that it had a specification of its own, so that people thought it was different to normal food. So they've normalized the crap they're selling by victimizing the good quality food. So, and I think what people need to understand is that for us as farmers, I want to grow chemically free. I don't allow anything on the farm when we're growing. We don't have, you know, I'm conscious of where my manure comes from, what compost we use.
Yeah.
I'm really concerned about all of that going on. So for me, I want to make a difference. I want to make good quality food. Now, who should have the right to charge me £500 a year to tell me I'm doing that job correctly?
Yeah, I know. It's so.
I'd rather give the £500 a year to, you know, away in free food, you know, to support people in the community, you know, giving it to someone who, you know, I just don't get it.
No, but you talked about the fertilizer, you know, the stuff that you spread. See, because there's so much of information about the quality of human feces that go on in the fields, which they do. And I've been told, I don't know whether it's the true or not, that even organic farmers use the human sewage as a fertilizer. I don't know whether it's truth or not, but the fact is that none of it gets put through correct
no, it doesn't.
Cleaning procedure. So when the water companies that supply this to the farmers, their ways of monitoring the drugs and whatever's in there are like 60 years out of date. They're not even tested for majority of the things that come in out there.
I'll go one further than that. So DEFRA has always supported putting human waste onto land. However, DEFRA is now bringing out a new policy that if a farmer has been putting human waste onto land and it's tested for forever chemicals, plastic in the soil, then they'll stop you farming that land for 12 years. Well, what sewage isn't going to have plastic in it when people take tablets? What isn't going to have forever chemicals in it when people take pharmaceuticals on a daily basis?
Yeah.
You can't not have it. So they've told farmers to put it on. They've paid farmers to take it. And now they're going to penalise them for using it. I mean, it's just bloody nonsense. The one thing
are they going to be testing that on a regular basis? There are tons of
yeah. They're going to come and test your soil.
But then we're going to lose all the farming then.
That's the idea.
Because even if you don't put a human shit, on your crops, even in organic, they still use plastics to cover the crops, right?
Of course they do.
Protect it from. So that will go. The fluorochemicals will go in there anyway. This is the point. That will go into the soil, not fluorochemicals. Sorry. The plastic. Yeah. So there will be microplastics in the soil.
Let me tell you something funny. So the other day we were staying with the girls from Organity down in Gerrard's Cross, and I got an invitation to go and meet with the guys from a company called Mad Company. I think they're Mad to Make a Difference on Facebook. I think it is. And these guys, So these guys have got a maggot farm as an R&D centre next door. Now, I went to meet him and I said, look, guys, I need to be quite honest with you before we do the interview that I've been very, very outspoken against not wanting maggot protein in food.
Yeah. You haven't converted, have you?
Sorry?
You haven't converted, have you?
No, but what I'll tell you is this, Anna. So I went and I made my point quite clear up front. And the guy said to me, right, let me stop you right there. He said, that is not going to happen for a minimum of 99 years. Right. I said, right, you sound convinced about it. He said, right, DEFRA won't allow it to start with. He said, when we started on this journey, the R&D side was to research and develop protein. Yeah. The problem came when they realised that the protein was, let's say, worth £1, but the compost that the maggots produce is worth £10.
Right.
So they've now realised. So they gave me some samples of this stuff. So Anna, this stuff is fantastic, I've got to say. And so
basically vermicompost, isn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah. So effectively, this stuff ends up as more as a fertilizer than a compost, I will say. But it's called Fraz, right? Okay. So they take the actual compost, the manure.
Yeah.
And then they grind up they cook and grind up the maggots as well.
Oh.
And this is a great bit. So they grind them up and put them in with the Fraz, and you can spread that around your beds as a fertilizer. Now, one thing in vitamins and minerals, it's really rich, so it's great. Just over here, actually, I can't show you that, spin the camera, but there's some pumpkins growing. I put some on there a week ago, and they've doubled in size. The plants have doubled in size in a week. It's been phenomenal.
Wow.
Now, what I would also say is the smell of it, because it's made of these, the larva of soldier flies.
Yeah.
Other insects don't like it, so other insects stay away from your plants.
But this is the one that Bill Gates made into that milk, didn't he?
I tried to, yeah.
The maggot
Yeah,
milk
well,
is made from that. Yeah.
he's a moron. Yeah, and the other thing which I loved about it was there's a product in it which people say, oh no, we can't have that 'cause it's got poison in it, which is chitin or chitin, however you pronounce it in the UK.
Yeah,
We
chitin,
pronounce
yeah.
it as chitin. Now with chitin, what I didn't know is if a plant is, let's say, so thick, an aphid comes along and he goes crunch, crunch, and takes a chunk out of it, right?
Yeah.
The more chitin or chitin you add to the ground and the plant takes it up, it makes the plants thicker. So they're like that thick and they can't take a bite out of it. So the insects stop attacking it because you've put the chitin, the chitin on the ground, and the plants have absorbed it and they get this lovely glossy leaves. I'm just blown away by the stuff, I've got to be honest. So what's been great is for me to physically go, as we've, and Anna, we've had the chance to go all around the country visiting different sites now.
Yeah.
And looking at things that I've completely dismissed on the grounds of one particular thing, like animal, protein from bugs in food, and see the positive side of it.
Yeah.
So
I assume they'll research though, Mark, with the effects on the plants, because chitin, some people are with allergic sensitivities could be allergic to chitin. So whether it would get to some extent into the plants, I don't know how that would work. I don't know.
Plants dissolve it. Plants completely dissolve it. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating me. I mean, they've been years and years in this research, and they've only now been given kind of permission to sell this stuff. And the guy took me through every solitary aspect of their science on it, and took me around their test beds, everything. I was really, really impressed. I've got to say that from my side, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, whatever.
Maggots.
When I came away after 4 hours. I was there 4 hours, Anna, and I still come away. I hadn't done the interview because I was that fascinated with what was going on. I hadn't done it. I said to him, I'm going to have to come back and do the interview another time.
Yeah. Madness.
Exactly.
Have you been filming them at all, or?
Yeah, I did put a video up the other day. Just what I've got some pictures. I was allowed to take some pictures inside the in the actual maggot farm. I wasn't allowed to film. I was allowed to take 4 pictures, what they approved. But honestly, Anna, some of the things we've seen, I don't know when we last spoke. So we went down to Truro, just to give you an idea of, and this is what I love, Anna, about British farmers.
Yeah.
We went down to Truro, down near Land's End, and we got to visit a guy called James. James was a dairy farm, but has converted across to beef cattle, Dexter beef cattle, and now grazing them on pasture. They're grass fed all year round. And what they're doing now is they've got chicken houses like my turkey houses, what are polytunnel framed, but they're on wheels and solar panels. These ones are really flash. And they walk down the field with the chickens in. So the chickens follow where the cattle has grazed. So the cattle take it down to, let's say, 4 inches of grass with the muck on it. The chickens then graze over that, taking it down to 2 inches, an inch, plus scrap all the compost about. They poo on it as well. So they're adding extra nitrogen to the ground. They're picking out all the bugs and that are coming out of the larvae of the cow poo. Yeah. And you end up with a really nice rich pasture, and the grass was lovely and green. There's people starting to understand, and farmers out there, that things have got to change. And that's the bit what excites me as we've travelled the country. We went up, and from there, Newcastle, right up near Hadrian's Wall, we visited a farm, 1,000 milking cattle. Wow. And all of them are organic. The guy produces, I think I'm right in saying Chris produces 5.2 million litres a year of milk. Wow. Yeah. And doesn't supply a supermarket.
Right, okay. So you dispose of it.
They've got a massive shop on site, what they sell huge amounts through. They supply an ice cream company. They supply milk out to village shops. They're just absolutely smashing it.
Yeah,
they're the things what I love getting invited to, Anna, because the best one, I've been invited to some farms, and I go, Jesus Christ, they won't be here in a month's time because they've got no idea. Then I go to other places and I'm like, wow, the incentives and the initiatives that these guys are doing and putting in place, working with and as much, Anna, as I hate DEFRA as an organisation, they're an evil bleeding lot. However, some of the things they're funding are mind-blowing. So there is some good people in DEFRA. I don't think that they all want, leaving, and eliminating. I just think that, unfortunately, a good percentage of them do.
Yeah. So what's the farmers? Obviously, you're saying you're visiting different farms and you're trying to literally to spread the word about obviously the CIC and what people should be doing? Is that because obviously farmers lost that, how to go forward? That's the whole idea of what you're trying to
100%. Yeah.
promote.
So and with that, we've got some really good responses. We've got some farmers that are now coming on board. We've got some sites that later this year we'll be setting up.
Yeah.
So, but I think what's really the big picture, Anna, is that people generally are starting to wake up to that there is a problem.
Yeah.
You know, they've watched people like you, myself, Gareth Wynne Jones, the effing farmer, Liam the sheep farmer, different people across the country, different farmers, preppers. People are starting to wake up to what's really going on, and people are starting to understand we must make changes. Now, the problem what I've seen is, Anna, I believe that DEFRA know we need to make changes.
Yeah.
But they've gone, we're here at the moment, and instead of saying we need to get over here, they're going, well, we need to get from here to here. Yeah, okay, that's great, but where's the transition period?
Yeah.
We need a transition period. Like these guys have, who have been working on this this MAD product. They're years into their initiatives, and they're still years before it's going to be ready.
Yeah.
So, whilst what I could see things like that, for instance, you could drop, I don't know, let's say a 40-foot container in the middle of a village. The village supplies their food waste and turns it into great compost, what they could use on their allotments and gardens. So I think as we roll forward, we're going to see things done very differently in farming. And
better be started doing this quickly. Bearing in mind, when we talk about obviously what DEFRA things,
that's my point.
It's not just about about us losing the farms because we get stuff imported. Considering now what's actually happening in the world in the past couple of weeks, for example.
Yeah.
And I've covered this on some some videos about the preparedness. Yes, a little bit fear-mongering in terms of the titles and the point, but the point is all of this is a threat to ourselves as an island. We cannot really probably need the farming industry back on running more than ever before, considering what
Anna, I would say now during the last World War, obviously they did dig for victory. And that was a huge thing in the UK for people to be involved in. Most of the guys had gone off to fight. So you ended up with the land army girls, people like my nan, that went on the land to produce food. And the challenge is that then we're producing 70% of our food.
Yeah.
So that they made up the other 30% by getting people back on the land. Now we're producing 32%. How the hell we don't even have the seed anymore, Anna.
Yeah.
The seed companies have been bought out by our friend Billy Boy. Kill Gates has got that he's got that organised, so he's stopping all the seed, so farmers are not allowed. And this isn't something that's just happening here, Anna. This is a worldwide issue. My partner, Gloria, she's Nigerian. They've got horrendous things going on in Nigeria at present with the farmers fighting each other, and it's all instigated and all paid for by the likes of, whether it's, the Gates Foundation or George Soros, whoever. So these things are going on worldwide. Now, if you take Nigeria as an instance, they used to overproduce food by 90% of their food got exported, and they had plenty of food. This year, they've got food shortages. That goes to show how much they've lost over 90% of their food production in 1 year.
See,
and they're not the only country, Anna.
Yeah. See, but obviously talking about the farming and that, obviously we can't ignore the elephant in the room is what still, unfortunately, is happening, up there with environment, if you wish, pull it politely, and the things they've been doing and the things they've been planning. Obviously, the articles, isn't it? They've been granted the funding to do the weather things, trying to dim the sun, that sort of nonsense. But obviously, we know it's been a lot of this been happening. There's tons and tons of people that are aware or know certain things that's been there. And I've done a couple of days back, I've done a video about the weird eeriness thing about the bees. It was just weird that we had this low cloud around for ages. My air quality dropped, and I know people talked about the volcanoes, eruptions, the sand that were because of the the storms and stuff is there, and it's like I haven't seen even the crisscross in the sky for a while because it's been covered in that weird thing. But my point was, when you go in a garden, I went to the garden and I felt it was really weird. It's eerie. It was quiet when you don't have a single bee or something buzzing about.
Yeah.
I had like one or two bumblebees that live in a pot. no butterflies. It was just odd. And I came out there and I'm like, this is strange. And then I looked at my air quality meter that I left outside for a week because I've noticed my air quality inside the house was going down. And at that point, I left, gone to fair. So obviously it's been declining. And I know some people say it's some volcanoes eruptions. Like, yeah, but there's been volcano eruptions last year. There've been storms that brought sand into that. And yet air quality wasn't ever as bad as that because I had this running for a year. So the point is, I had massive failures in the garden. Some did okay, and the greenhouse thing, of course, do better. And I had tons and tons of people also commenting on the same issue, that some things are just not working. I had some really weird tomatoes, right, with a little almost like piles hanging out. It were just testicles. It was just weird. It's just really strange things happening, and people agreed they see a lot of mutations, a lot of weird stuff. And again, with the farming as well, some people say that that's partially another way why, you know, certain farms, I don't know, not doing so great neither, you know.
Interestingly, we had a conversation with Roger Meacock yesterday, the vet, who's an holistic vet, very awake, talks very openly about how fake PCR tests are, and how they are used to manipulate farmers into culling animals and so forth.
Yeah.
And one of the things which obviously we've got coming down the train track, Anna, like a railroad, honestly, is mRNA vaccines coming into our food supply. And he's certainly fighting back hard against that, which, you know, we all are talking about it. But that's one of the things. I think what people have to understand is that when people were given jibby jabs, and, you know, people took things which probably wasn't the right thing to do, those what got away and didn't do it will be manipulated in a different manner, let's say.
Yeah.
Because, you know, whether it's through meat production, you know, add it to the meat to cull the animals, PCR tests, cull the animals. Once you've culled all the animals, then you can give people what you want to eat rather than what they would like to eat. And we're seeing across the country, and I absolutely predict this winter, the minute October starts, we will see massive culling of animals under bird flu, TB, BSE, whatever other BS.
Yeah, I've seen the blue tongue one outbreak again in Yorkshire or something.
Yeah.
But see, my do you know those legislations of bringing in the meat and plant material and dairy from, say, abroad? And this November, I think there's meant to be a legislation where obviously the companies have to pay. And I remember covering this last year where they were talking it's going to increase the prices of imports because, it's going to cost other companies to import. Apparently, there wasn't enough vets because before the meat coming in, they needed to basically vet the meat to test the meat for specific stuff that shouldn't be there. That's not legally allowed in this country. But nonetheless, the point was that all that stuff that was implemented to make sure that the stuff's coming in this country is safe to eat without any additive. So now, guess what? They're scrapping it. So there's going to be no legislations, no checks, because they couldn't implement this because it's costing too much, too many delays. So they're now scrapping this before they even got introduced. So the point is now, and I'm excluding the America from this in terms of the meat imports, from anywhere else, the meat will be coming in without any appropriate checks. And in a lot of those countries, that means cattle, whatever else the meat's imported, is treated with either antibiotics or something else. With America, they've been told strictly that we're only going to be taking your meat that is not being fiddled with, right? But again, they might later relax the rules.
And the challenge is that worldwide animals being culled and meat is being reduced. Yeah. So I don't believe long term we will have imports of meat anyway.
Right.
Genuinely don't think there'll be any imports of meat. By 2050, there will be no meat at all in the UK. That they've already, and not just the UK, worldwide.
Yeah.
That's what their game plan is.
Is that why we're importing the meat from Uruguay? There was, and do you know, I fell for this. I went to, it was Asda, they're selling a specific brand, and I just bought one. I needed steak, and I bought one, and I brought home, and I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? Because all the supermarkets generally prioritize, and then a couple of days after, there was an article about exactly that. Suddenly people noticed that the meat was from Uruguay. It's like, well, what? I'm pretty sure it was that. And they're like, oh my God. And this is all in a name because they're saying they want to give you a better value. Are you telling me it is a better value and cheaper for them to import this from Uruguay than to take it from up the road farmer that is somewhere there?
Well,
right.
And this is the nonsense British farmers are up against, Anna. There was an article the other day I saw on social media, and it said, I think it was in a leg of lamb in Waitrose was £19 on special offer.
Yeah.
A leg of New Zealand lamb.
Yeah.
But a leg of New Zealand lamb in New Zealand is $76.
Right.
What? How?
Yeah.
How can we have the same meat from the same sheep? One leg's in its own country is worth $76, which I don't know what that equates to, I've got to say.
Yeah.
You get my point. You know,
yeah.
And that's the bullshit we're having to deal with. They're playing everybody on such a large scale with the money they've got available to them, that people fall for it and believe, you know, Anna, what is the real price of something? You know, now
what people are prepared to pay, isn't it?
Exactly that. So if people go into Tesco,
unless there are shortages, well, even though
exactly, you know, if people go into a supermarket and potatoes are priced at 9p a kilo, that's what they assume potatoes are worth.
Yeah.
The fact that they probably cost 40p a kilo to produce is neither here nor there. People don't care.
No.
And the problem is that people need to care, because once farmers are not there, they are not there.
Yeah.
Annie, you and I have had this conversation before, and I spoke about this yesterday. We've had this conversation before. The Sainsbury's 2030 food report.
Yeah.
That says it all to me. By 2030, Sainsbury's state that they don't need any farmers at all. We'll be able to grow everything in factory farms, or, you know, factory farm. If farm, is that the right word? You know, in factories, they'll be able to produce everything, you know, on mass scale from shite, what they want you to eat. You know, made from. I was
going to do something suggested to cover. I will do this eventually. I would just, it's because obviously it's quite a big report, but the nutshell is it's exactly that, isn't it? They don't need meat, don't need farmers. It's all like, you know, let's eat vegan sausage, that sort of thing, which is.
Now, there was an interesting fact I got told yesterday, and Roger Meacock, I've got to give credit to him for this, that there was a report done, Anna, that vegans, apparently because of having less animal fat in their body, their brain shrink as a result of it. So they actually have a smaller brain and can't think as well as carnivores. So, and I thought that was just brilliant, because I was like, that's probably going to piss a few vegans off, you know, but you know, look into it. There's research been done on this, and a lot of research stating how bad it is for people not to eat meat.
Right. Okay.
So
it sounds very interesting.
You're not vegan, are you, Anna?
No, certainly not. I do like my meat and my sausage, but I just want to point out, we're coming back to the imported meat stuff. That's something I wanted people to be aware of. Obviously, I said I don't have a local butcher here near me, so I do go to supermarkets, but like many. Because in all honesty, when we used to have a local butcher here, he was charging like £16 for one piece of steak, like, you know, meat. And many people now can afford to. It's just as simple as that. But at least the bare minimum we can do is when you go to the supermarket buying your meat, is to make sure you do buy the one from the UK rather than the one that's been imported, purely for just the health or what's in them. It's, you know, they really puzzled me, really annoyed me. I've done this last year, right? I talked about the video where the chicken, a lot of the chicken that is a pre-packaged meals, like chicken croissants, whatever the shit is, like pre-done, the food you don't want to eat anyway, it's imported from, it was imported from Poland and somewhere else. We've been told 100% that those meats there are full of antibiotics. So they're like, yes, of course, we're not going to be, you know, we shouldn't be selling this, it's not allowed. And then they found meat in sale in specific supermarkets from Poland, and then they found it was full of antibiotics first time, and then a couple of months later they found it was full of salmonella, and they're still importing this, and they're still selling it.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. We said we're not allowed to do this. Our farmers not allowed to do that, right? And then we're allowing that to still come in there, found them guilty of 2 offences, and still selling it.
Anna, this has always been the problem for the British farmer. The British farmers have been let down by the government at every freaking stage. Double standards, you know, people want to talk about 2-tier policing. That is nothing compared to what the farmers go through. You know, how can a farmer in New Zealand produce a sheep, take a leg of lamb and send it to the UK halfway around the bloody planet and sell it for a quarter of the price of what it's worth.
Yeah.
That somebody in there is subsidizing something. We know that.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, and the quality now, what I will say is New Zealand lamb particularly is a good quality lamb when it's fresh. But as we know, we've had the conversation before, Anna, they put it in a carbon dioxide tank to transfer it from New Zealand to England. The minute it's taken out of the tank of carbon dioxide, what happens? It starts to decay. So, yes, it's a good quality product while it's there. You know, we're seeing this with apples. You know, I went to get some apples the other day and I picked them up and after I'd paid for them and bought them, I was like, I bought a bit into one. It was like, these are horrible. Now, I thought they were British Braeburn. So when I went back to the shop next time, I said, look, we bought this Braeburn. They were horrible. She said, yeah, they were those ones from I can't even, Malaysia or somewhere. Now, it was some bizarre country. And I was like, so you're selling them in the shop? She said, yeah. She said, we sell loads of them. I said, has anyone ever come back and complained? She said, well, yeah, several people have, because they're not that good inside. They look nice.
Was it the farm shop? Was there a farm shop?
This was in a farm shop. And I said to her, I said, the problem is you're selling them and they're covered in whether that's a peel or whatever it might be. And yes, it might look 100% good, but when you bite it, they're already a year old, Anna.
Yeah.
They're a year old. They've been cold stored. They've been dipped in chemicals. They've been shipped to the other side of the bloody world. And then we put them on the shelf and farmers go. And this is what I say to people. If you eat seasonally, then you've got really good quality food. If you don't eat seasonally.
100%. But at the same time, it's got to be some sort of due diligence. That's the one. From the people that are in the farm shops, because many people take it as gospel. Okay. And I always say to people, when I do the videos, I expose certain things. I just point out the facts, true facts, right? Just because people need to know and they can make choices. I don't feed anybody in terms of my opinion, what you should be or should not be doing. I say what it is and how it is, and then people can make choices. That's the whole point. So isn't there the people that do that and sell this in the local farm shop should not be selling freaking apples from Malaysia, or make this very open so people know, because many people will trust in that. Somebody told me, and I think I mentioned before, somebody's seen one of my local butchers, not local butchers, but like a few towns ahead. Somebody said they've seen a butcher buying meat from the supermarket, trolley full, when it was on deal like Easter or Christmas time, to sell in the shop. So to me, if I would physically see this, verify that, I wouldn't trust that. I wouldn't trust the butcher anymore. The same thing with the fruit and vegetables in the farm shops. People go, oh yeah, shop in my farm shop because I don't like supermarkets. I buy all organic or seasonal. And I would buy. Oh, I bought some bananas. Do you see bananas grown in UK? No. So, like,
I think two sides to that. One is that I think that the farm shops can't physically buy the produce from local farmers they want to buy. That's right. And I know that from my own experience when I had the farm shop. I couldn't find the growers that produced the stuff locally to supply to me.
Yeah.
And when I could, and I always sold that first off. But when it comes down to the fact you can't and people want it, you've got to go somewhere to get it.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think there is a double issue on things like fruit, especially, Anna.
Yeah.
Where we start talking about things like bananas. Are they grown? How are they grown? Are they grown on a big plantation? You know, are they grown with chemicals? Are they, how do they get here? There's lots of things, we can look at, are they, grown on an ethical environment, where the plantation staff get a good amount of the money, are they grown organically? So I think that over the course of the years, Anna, what's happened is food has become very dissected, right? So where 100 years ago you had food, now we've got chemical-free food, organic food. We've got, food what comes in from overseas. We've got local food. We've got, yes, it's British, but it could be red track that could have come in from overseas. We've got all these different categories of food, and people are just fucking confused.
Yeah.
Now the people even selling it don't know what they're selling, and so I think the one thing I think we really need again is some really good quality understanding, education around food.
Yeah.
And to talk to people about, what is the best thing you can be doing for food, because I think there's a lot of confusion around food these days, Anna. A lot of confusion.
Yeah.
Far outweighs the amount of good information out there. And I think a lot of this is put out there by the supermarkets to fearmonger people. You know, last time I went into, you know, every little Hertz, right above the bloody fridges, there was this massive Union Jacks, and, you know, we support British farming. And there was one little bit of British meat in there, and the rest of all the fridges and freezers were all full of fucking foreign meat. It's like, no, that's misadvertising. That's false flagging. You know, we need to get some honesty back, and the only way that's going to come, Anna, from my opinion, is that the people that watch videos like this, that support people like us, need to vote with their feet and start right into the supermarkets and pulling them up on it. Go in there, load a shopping trolley up full of meat, and leave it in the aisle. Just, if it ain't English, leave it in the aisle and just go home. You know, I just think we've got to do something to get the supermarkets to wake up to where they're going wrong, and that isn't going to come by them making a decision.
Yeah.
It's got to come from us forcing that decision as consumers to actually do what's right for farmers.
Yeah, it is a hard one, isn't it? Because we all rely on it. Heads up, I do my prepping hauls. I'm like everybody else. I go and I stock up on tins from the supermarket because that's it. It's what else do you buy stuff, you know, like that.
Good food project. You can buy it all online and have it shipped to your door.
Yeah, but with the tins and, you know, beans.
That's what they do.
Yeah, no, but not like, again, it's priced a lot to do with that preparedness. It's cost a lot, doesn't it? A lot of people can barely afford to eat, not at all to stock up a little bit behind. So people do resort to.
I do question that, Annie, you know, and the reason I say that, I was in the supermarket the other day. A supermarket. I was delivering some veg to one of the like corner shop supermarket things, and one of my friends was in there, right? And he bought that morning 20 cigarettes, a vape, 2 energy drinks, a Mars bar, and a pack of crisps to last him the day, right? 25, I think it was about 40 odd quid, right? It was 20 odd quid for the cigarettes alone, you know, about 40 quid he spent.
Yeah.
And I laughed and I said, oh, you've got a nice healthy breakfast there. He says, yeah, that'll keep me going for the day. He spends that every morning when he goes in there, and his wife's moaning on social media she can't afford to feed the kids. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Just what planet are you on?
I know there are some people some people are like that, but there are genuinely some people that don't. I could not afford with the prices of everything, the electricity, the heating oil, that sort of stuff. I couldn't possibly afford to stock up from anywhere. But even though I put my hands up, when I buy stuff, I don't even buy the branded tins because it's just cheaper and to stockpile. And I'm like in the boat of pretty much everybody else, you know, working family with one child, and just I don't smoke, you know, drink, yes, but do you see what I'm saying? I don't spend money on anything else than that. And to me, stocking up it's got to be the budget, just so you're able to actually stash something away. Because again, everybody's different. Everybody's priorities are different, especially if you're over the prepping nature, isn't it? If you want to really prep and you only have a little bit, you go to supermarkets. You know, if people can afford to, and many, I'm sure many could buy this from places like that. Absolutely. It's just the money's got a lot to answer for many people now, I think.
I'm not convinced.
No.
I think too many people spend too much money on shit they don't need to buy.
Yeah, I'm sure they
not everybody, and I genuinely know that there is a lot of people that are struggling. But I also think there's a lot of people claim they're struggling, then spend a lot of money on shit they don't need to spend it on.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the problem. You know,
but maybe those people don't want to be prepared.
And then, absolutely. And what I was going to also say is, you know, to make your money go further and to secure your family, you've grown food.
Yeah.
So you've taken and made a conscious decision. You know, even if you try to, you know, you do produce a certain amount of food.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a result of your, you know, requirements as a family, you've made a conscious decision to do that. Most people don't. You know, they love to talk about how bad their life is, but they don't want to change it.
No, I think it's time, like now, more. It couldn't be any more not convenient time, but time to think, for people to think about. We're on the brink of something, you know, horrendous. I'm not just talking about the farming. Yeah. It's from farming. It's from what's currently happening. It's been going from bad to worse, really. And it's now another insult to an injury. Things are going to get tougher. The prices are going to be going up again. I've predicted, right, a lot of price increases since when I talked about last year. And people, a lot of nonsense you're talking about. the things that we talked about, yes, it took a bit longer to what when they said like prices with the cocoa, the chocolate. I talked about it probably about 7 months ago. So stock up on cocoa. If you bake it, if you know doing your cooking, whatever it is, stocking up because it's going to go up. And apparently, price of cocoa now doubled. Okay, took a while, but it did. It's now doubled in price. So if you were
sorry, Annie, you froze. Sorry, Don, I didn't catch a word of that. You froze.
Okay, now you're back. Sorry, but no, like with the cocoa, 7 months ago, I said to people it's going to be, going up in price because of, and it took 7 months, 8 months to trickle down. And there was an article the other day saying, oh yeah, price of chocolate and cocoa more than doubled in price. Yeah, and that was the point. Preparedness is one of those things. Looking ahead,
100%. Yeah, and we know there's certain things you can't stock up too much on, Anna, like fresh milk or fresh fruit and veg.
No,
but the things you can. I mean, I remember when I started prepping 5 years ago, tins of tomatoes then were about 19 to 20p. I went into a shop the other day and they're £1.40. And I was like, how did they go from 19p to £1.40? And that's when we talk about prepping. Prepping comes in lots of different manners. It might be that you're prepping to save yourself cash in the future, as well as having the food physically there in the future. People prep for lots of different reasons. And I think that's where perhaps as preppers, we take for granted why we do it.
Yeah.
And, people who don't prep at all, like, my youngest daughter especially, she'll go shopping every day because she thinks that's, always going to be there.
Yeah. But things are disappearing even though they're taking stuff off. And many, again, I've mentioned this once, and that's what I've noticed, like a few cheap things disappearing. And many people like, yeah, absolutely. There's stands and stands of items disappearing off the shelves. And they seem to be the more affordable things that people rely on are disappearing. Yes. As this bottom range, not value range, whatever. Yeah, that's the one. They've taken about 200 or 300 of the basic items from that thing. They only introduced it 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, and now suddenly within a year, they're now taking 2 years. Sorry, they're now taking 200 or 300 items off that. So it's
of course they are, because they don't want to sell you cheap items, Anna. What they want to do is sell you the expensive brands.
Well, that's exactly the point. It becomes unaffordable. Many things as a prepper now, things I used to buy, I just do not buy anymore because to me, the prices are horrendous. Some bits are more than tripled. We know, obviously, olive oil, I'm not even talking about that. But nonetheless, it is one of it. But things like a general, like biscuits, I used to buy, we don't eat a lot of biscuits, it's highly processed food. But as a prepping for the prepping pantry, occasionally chocolate biscuits I used to buy from Lidl. And they used to be like 19p, then they were 29p, and they're 49p. So they're pretty much doubled in price in just under a year. And that goes for many things. The vegetable prices are horrendous. It's a cucumber, £1 for a cucumber.
Yeah, they're going to get, and we know it's going to get a lot worse, Anna. We know it's going to get a lot worse.
With all the stuff that is happening, it's going to be inevitable that whether the price of food directly or indirectly going to be impacted by the conflicts, the supermarkets are going to take the Mickey Michael and are going to increase the prices even more, just to make even harder for everybody else to do. So.
Well, I said all the way down the line, this winter will be the winter what we have catastrophic things go wrong, because everyone talks about the 2030 agenda. It's not, it's the 2025 agenda. They led us to believe they'd rolled it back to 2030. They haven't. This winter will be the winter of discontent. This will be when food prices go through the roof, when meat runs out. This will be when all the shit hits the fan, is this winter. And I think
prices of fuel, considering that's going to be coming up in the next 2 weeks.
That's going to be a big issue, because Anna, you know as well as I do, whether it's any form of gas, oil, anything at all is coming out of either from the Russia, then we've not got that because of the conflict with Ukraine. We've got it coming out of the Middle East. We won't have that anymore. Well, where do they think the energy's coming from?
Yeah.
Where do they think this oil was coming from? Oh, was America going to supply it all to us? Oh, well, that's great. So, I remember watching a video by, I can't remember his name. Can't remember. Anyway, Neil McCoy Ward, and he was talking about the ships that come in from America that have compressed gas on, and they, dock and they unload the gas so that we can have gas.
Yeah.
We would need 500 boats a day docking in Europe to give us the same amount of gas as what Russia had on one pipeline. And they've only got about 5 of these boats. And this is the nonsense. People say, oh, it's all right, we're going to get it from somewhere else. you haven't got a clue what's involved
I
in
know.
saying that. And
I know. I totally get it. People always, but there's somewhat is naivety of people relying. There are people that rely on. They're thinking now government. No, and I understand. You think, well, they're in power. They should know what they're doing. They didn't even have a backup freaking plan for the food shortages because these stuff. We have a backup plan. What is it? Oh yeah, we don't know yet. If they're
I'll tell you what their backup plan is, Anna. Their backup plan is to starve us lot into death, and then tick the box for the agenda of we've removed 7 billion people off the planet, and that's where they're going. Whether people want to accept that or not, I really don't care. I know that my family ain't going to go hungry, and for those who don't listen, I think it's a big percentage of people who follow us, Anna, do understand. That's why they follow us, and that's there might be some things they don't agree 100% with us on, but I think majoritively the people that do watch, and I would say to people, like and share this because people do need to understand what's going on, and spread it out among your families because people are going to feel the crunch inside the next few months on what's happening, without a doubt.
Yeah. So shall we then, obviously we're coming up to now. So if anybody's got questions, guys, fire away. But whilst if anybody typing anything, just the one thing for people to prioritize these and prepping now, I would say is the fuel. Okay, the whole the fuel scenario. Okay, from the wholesales to the forecourt, it takes about 14-15 days to come through. So the conflict over the issue has been happening. The price has been gone up per barrel already, and they're talking it's potentially going to be going up again. So the predictions are, unfortunately, of the fuel cost. We're talking about the diesel, potentially going from £1.70 to £2 a litre. And this is going to be horrendous. We are on heating oil. Okay, this is for heating and hot water. And we've been to the stage where the oil has been absolutely horrendously priced. And during the winter times, we can go, or gone at the time when it was really expensive, going through £600 6 months. 6 weeks. Okay, because it was horrendously priced. So yes, we're still in the summer, but if this comes to that stage, and you imagine, say, a fuel is £1.70, and you have to heat your home, you have to cook, it's unaffordable, and it's going to be unaffordable for many. So things now, again, I did this prep last year. Home Bargains do little gas canisters of that size that go into portable stoves. They're £4.49 for 4. Each one of them will last you for like 2 hours, constant burning.
Yeah.
So you can stock up on that if you have a wood
Anna,
burner.
let me just stop you on that. We left where we are in Somerton yesterday, down in Somerset. We stopped at 13 places to try and buy those gas bottles, and nobody had got any because we're down to one gas bottle, which is in the stove. And I thought I better get some. I cannot buy any anywhere.
What, the little ones? Or the you froze? Which cat? Oh, he's gone. Oh no. Hold on. You disappeared.
Yeah.
Sorry. Which canisters you were talking about? Like a little.
The little aerosol ones. So I went out yesterday to try and buy them. 13 different locations we went to. Couldn't buy any.
No, I think some people are obviously potentially stocking up, and then obviously if you do gas, obviously you need to have a little stove, and then people need to then stock up on the bit of wood, whatever, if you go wood burner, because again, people think you can get it, but if you all in a position of everybody who's got a water burner, and then you think, oh, I'm going to get some wood, well, so would be another hundreds of people in your street or whoever, you're going to try to get it from the same place. So it's very important too. And then food that doesn't require much warming up. So it's something to think about. A couple of canisters spare, not it's going to last a long time, but anything better than nothing as a preparedness.
And I think that, like you said, I think the next 2 weeks there's relevance to 2 weeks as well, because I think that Trump has given Iran 2 weeks lead time to what's coming, so that gives us 2 weeks before it starts. And I think, as we all know, that those prices are going to start going up now. We've got 2 week lead time. And we've got 2 weeks before the shit really hits the fan. Within the next month, we're going to see some massive changes, Anna, without a doubt.
I know. It's a scary times, really. But as always say, there's no need to be scared. We just need to be prepared.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's what I say to people. They have still got time. What you don't want to be is that person who's reliant on getting into a supermarket the day it all starts.
Yeah.
That's what you don't want to be. You don't want to be there then when the prices have gone through the roof. There's hardly nothing there. Everyone's arguing and fighting over what's not available. What you want to do is be sitting at home with your feet up at that point, laughing about everybody else.
Yeah. Well, on this note then, on this preparedness note, well, it was very nice having you. And we'll when you got more time, obviously, when you sort of have your break in between your another few months of travel, we shall catch up again and do another chat to see what's been happening.
And I'm sure we will, darling. And
Yes.
thank you very much for having us back on the channel. And you know,
always welcome. And thank you
everyone who's
for watching.
share the message for Anna, because you know everyone needs to know what's going on.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye bye.